How do new things come into existence? New ideas, new stories, new songs. For centuries, artists, writers, and scientists have been producing mind bending works that have never existed before. And yet, paradoxically, they all seem to draw from the same limited amount of building blocks. Musicians work with the same notes, writers work with the same alphabets. Languages are built from the same finite inventory of sounds. So, where does novelty come from? How can finite materials generate infinite possibilities? And what does any of this have to do with the Wu Tang Clan? To answer these questions, we need to begin with a problem. It appears in physics, in language, in information technology, in cognition, and it appears in hip hop. How can complexity emerge from the combination of simple elements? To understand how, we will begin at the beginning of the 20th century. For most of human history, the idea of continuity seemed obvious. Water flows continuously, light appears continuous, sound unfolds continuously. The world presents itself as a seemingly uninterrupted stream. But then came Max Planck. In the year 1900, Planck was in his lab studying a seemingly ordinary problem: the way that heated objects emit lights and energy. Physicists at the time assumed that energy behaved kind of like a dimmer switch. You could increase or decrease it by any amount, no matter how small. But Planck's calculations suggested something else. What if energy did not come in a continuous flow? What if it behaved more like money? You cannot pay with half a penny if the smallest unit available is a penny. Exchanges must occur in discrete amounts. Planck proposed that energy behaved in a similar way. Instead of being exchanged continuously, it appeared to come in tiny packets, which he called. The idea was strange, but eventually would become foundational for quantum theory. More importantly, for our purposes, it introduced a question that will follow us throughout this video. Can continuous phenomena emerge from discrete elements? For our purposes, however, what matters is not the physics itself, but the possibility revealed that continuity may sometimes be an appearance rather than a fundamental feature of reality. This insight would fundamentally transform our perception of the world. Yet, the most interesting aspect of the story is not confined to physics. As it turns out, the relationship between discrete elements and continuous experiences appears over and over again in other unexpected places. Consider sound. When we hear music, we experience a continuous wave. A singer or a cellist can glide between pitches. Nothing about listening suggests fragmentation. Yet, every song on your phone, for example, is stored as a collection of discrete numbers. This fact becomes particularly interesting when we consider the work of Harry Nyquist and later Claude Shannon. Their work laid the foundations for modern digital communication and signal processing. One of the most remarkable consequences of this work is the realization that a continuous signal can be reconstructed from discrete measurements, provided that those measurements are taken frequently enough. This idea sounds almost paradoxical. How can continuity emerge from discontinuity? How can a collection of separate points become a smooth curve? Yet, every digital recording demonstrates precisely this. What appears to be continuous is often generated from discrete elements.
Out on the porch.
By now, a pattern is beginning to emerge. Small inventories can generate astonishing complexity. The same pattern appears in another domain that most of us use every day without even thinking about it. Human language is one of the most creative systems ever observed. Every single day, people produce sentences that have never been spoken before in the history of the species. You are probably hearing some for the first time right now. How is this possible? How can finite beings generate an effectively infinite number of expressions? One answer emerged in the work of linguist Noam Chomsky. Human beings do not memorize every sentence they will ever produce. That would be crazy. Instead, we possess a finite inventory of elements and rules, a limited collection of sounds, a limited collection of words, a limited collection of grammatical principles. From these finite resources emerge an effectively infinite number of possible expressions. This insight is what he referred to as generativity. Language is not creative because it contains infinitely many pieces. Language is creative because finite pieces can be combined in infinitely many ways. A child learns a few dozen utterances and immediately gains access to literature, philosophy, poetry, politics, and science. An astonishing level of complexity emerges from a surprisingly small inventory. The mathematician might describe this as a combinatorial explosion. A small number of elements generate an enormous number of possible arrangements. 26 letters in the English language become hundreds of thousands of words. Words become sentences. Sentences become books. The same thing happens in another domain that has fascinated mathematicians and artists alike. The rules of chess are simple. The board contains only 64 squares. The pieces are limited in number, and the legal moves are finite. And yet, the space of possible games is so vast that humanity has not even come close to exhausting it. Chess has been played for roughly 15 centuries. That is 1,500 years. Millions of games have been recorded over time. Supercomputers have analyzed positions beyond human comprehension. Yet, new games continue to emerge every single day.
Kosteniuk plays rook h to e1, and it is now only as of move 12 that we have a completely new game. Here, Notrbek goes back with queen to b3, and it is now as of move 8 that we have a completely new game. Judith goes for the immediate pawn to c4, and it is now as of move 12 that this position has never been reached again. After knight to e5, it is as of move 11 that this position has never been repeated again. We have d3, captures, and queen captures, and it is already now as of move 5 that we have a move, or rather a position that has never happened again after this game. Magnus goes pawn to a4, and it is now as of move 17 that we have a completely new game.
The reason, once again, is combinatorial. A finite set of elements generates an astronomical number of possible arrangements. the creative power does not reside in the individual pieces. It resides in the space of possible combinations. At this point, a deeper question begins to emerge. If language is recombination, if chess is recombination, if digital audio is recombination, then what exactly do we mean when we speak about originality? We often imagine originality as the creation of something entirely new, something that emerges from nowhere, something untouched by what came before. Yet, all of humanity's most creative activities appear to operate differently. Novelty often emerges not through the invention of new things, but through the discovery of new relationships among existing ones. And perhaps nowhere is this more evident than in hip hop.
On est des produits de nos environnements. Nos mères auraient voulu qu'on grandisse autrement. On est conditionné à l'emprisonnement. Bats-toi, lis tes actes à ton raisonnement.
Consider the producer sitting in front of a stack of records. To the casual listener, each record is a finished product. To the producer, it is a collection of possibilities. A drum break, a piano chord, a vocal fragment, a texture, a rhythm. Much like you picking words from language, the producer selects discrete elements from a musical archive to deliver an idea. These fragments are then arranged into new structures, relationships, and meanings. And no one illustrates this process in a cooler way than the Wu-Tang Clan.
A game of chess is like a sword fight. You must think first, before you move.
Style is immensely strong and immune to nearly any weapon. When it's properly used, it's almost invincible.
I'ma give it to you with no trivia. Roll like cocaine straight from Bolivia. My hip hop will rock and shock the nation like the Emancipation Proclamation. Weak MCs approach with slang that's dead. Them eyes are running to the wall.
The production of Reza feels archaeological. Soul and jazz records, kung fu films, dialogue samples, and forgotten sounds are excavated and rearranged into new structures.
I don't give a damn. I'll kill anyone in my way.
Homicide City shit. Homicide City shit.
The result is neither imitation or repetition. It is emergence. Something genuinely new appears. The components are not new, but the relationships among them are.
Oh my God!
And perhaps this is why sampling resonates so deeply with us. The process mirrors something we may already be doing internally. Memory, after all, is not a recording device. Psychologists increasingly understand memory as reconstructive rather than reproductive. We do not replay the past, we rebuild it. Discrete fragments of sensation, emotion, narrative, and meaning. Each act of remembering becomes an act of recombination. The mind itself may be a machine for generating novelty from finite means. And if this is true, then perhaps the story of hip-hop belongs to a much larger history. A history that spans physics, mathematics, language, cognition, and art. Across disciplines that may appear unrelated, the same insight keeps returning. Complexity emerges from simplicity. Novelty emerges from recombination. Wholes emerge from parts. The path from quantum physics to the Wu-Tang is about the realization that a finite number of elements can generate an infinite number of possibilities. And perhaps creativity itself is nothing more and nothing less than the exploration of the possibilities hidden within those combinations.